Go ahead, Chris.
It's, one of the paragraphs you had on the minutes, it has spelled my last name wrong. It's not major, but it could be fixed quick.
Okay, well,
It's nothing in there, but
We
you
will
did
fix
tell me
that.
to remind
Okay,
you.
recording started.
I assume it's a usual misspelling.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we'll look for it.
And with the corrections, I'd like to approve the minutes.
All right.
We do have a quorum.
Minutes, can we get approval as amended? Okay, terrific. We're gonna go right to our featured speaker today because he has a time restraint. We will do the chair's report and other board news after Winton has spoken. So, folks, can we have some quiet over here, please? Trudy, please. Okay, so it's a real pleasure to introduce Winton Habersham, Senior Vice President of the Subways of New York City Transit. It's a miracle that he's here today, considering I pester him endlessly with emails about signs or announcements, but it is getting better, I have to say. So Winton's going to present the Subway Action Plan, and I know unless you've been living in a cave somewhere, everybody has heard about the Subway Action Plan, who's paying for it, who's not paying for it, etc. But Winton, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me, Andrew and Bill, I appreciate the invite and always look forward to the opportunity to speak to transit advocates, and certainly the Transit Riders Council is tops in the list with that. So I appreciate your not just your interest, obviously, but your passion for transportation in New York and at large. And so I'll go through the Subway's Action Plan. As I mentioned, as Andrew mentioned, I do have some constraints, so I have to do a hard stop at 1 o'clock. I'll try to get through the slides. There's a number of them as quickly as possible, but try to leave some time for Q&A as well. All right. Can everybody hear me okay? This is a little awkward here. Okay, great.
Is there a plus or minus 5 minutes in that, like, on-time performance thing?
No, I go by wait time now. So. Okay, so as many of you know, the New York City subway serves upwards of 6 million customers on a daily basis. Those numbers are changing of late. We're doing some analysis to figure out why, but we still, we do have our $6 million customer days. It's the only big city on the globe that runs 24 hours a day, and it depends on who you talk with. There are other properties, obviously, that do so, but we certainly are the biggest. London is starting to do that as well on the weekends, at least. We have more track than any other subway system in the world, and certainly including Boston, Chicago, Atlanta, and the like. 660 miles, really a little more than that now, of mainline track. 472 stations, thanks to the opening of the 2nd Avenue subway. That was 469 for a long time, 468 before we opened up Hudson Yards. And we think of ourselves as an authority, obviously. But we can't do what we do alone. We can't run 8,500 trips a day. We can't have 29,000 employees, and at least in the Department of Subways. We can't use 6,500 trains a day, as well as the other stats, without our partners, such as FDNY, such as Con Edison, NYPD. They're critical to the operation, particularly when we have an incident. But also, we're supported by our partners in the absence of an incident. A lot of folks don't realize how important Verizon is to the operation, and our fare media network runs along the Verizon network, so they provide services for us as well. We're here today and sharing this information with you, but also we did to the press, to the media at large, and to the State Assembly, because the system is in distress. We are faced with a lot of challenges, and we need solutions. And while these problems are not new, they have been in existence for some time. They've gotten, obviously, and for good reason, a lot more attention in the last couple of years. And because delays have gone up, And so we do need to give this attention, and I think rightly so. The chairman has charged us with creating better solutions for these issues. But we're not where we were in 1981, and that's a good thing, where we had over 5,700 track fires, we had 21 collisions and derailments back then, and almost 5,000 robberies. So the system was in a totally different state and place. I recall those days. I was one who, I'm a lifer when it comes to the subway. I grew up and lived in the Bronx and rode the train every day to Soho when I was in high school. So I was right in the midst of that, and I recall, what things were like back then. Something that we take for granted now, air conditioning. I remember I used to ride the 6 train back then, and I would look, and that's when the cars were retrofitted for air conditioner. I used to look for a car that had the large conduit, because I knew that was an air-conditioned car. But, it's something obviously we take. Exactly, that was a good sign, right? So, we've as a city and as an organization, we've come a long way. But the challenges and the incidents that we have experienced, have really come to a head. And this past summer, while we were able to put plans in place to mitigate the impact, I think the structure, the transportation structure in this region has very similar challenges. And I like to put things in perspective sometimes. When we were in the midst of Sandy, particularly those 4 or 5 days and even a couple of weeks after, I think it was the then FTA administrator mentioned that when we stalled, when we didn't have subway service and regional service for those 4 or 5 days after Sandy, that reflected and represented 40% of the trips in the country. So that really goes to show how important transportation is in this immediate region. That said, we still have an aging infrastructure. We've had a historical lack of capital investment. Certainly we've had a large capital program, but I can say certainly as one who runs subways and is very familiar with the assets, it's not enough. As much as it's been, there are projects that have had, it's like you have to decide which one goes, which one goes forward and which one doesn't. And so when we put on top of that the record number of customers in the last few years, you really do have a big challenge that we have to address. So the objective really of the Subways Action Plan, and I'm going to focus more so on the stabilizing part. There's a modernizing part as well, which is the capital program part of it. I'm not going to get into that too much today at all, really, but I'll spend the next few minutes talking about what we're doing to stabilize the system and to try to mitigate the failures. We want to improve reliability, and we want to improve capacity. And again, keeping in mind, as I try to tell my leadership team, as well as those further down in the organization, that when you do your work and you do your inspections and you perform your maintenance, you want to do so with an interest of reliability. You don't want to leave that asset without improving or ensuring the reliability of that system, of that asset. And so we do that also in the stations as well. We want to enhance the stations and the safety within the stations. Again, keeping the customer in mind. But when we do have incidents, when things do occur, whether they be a failed signal or a ruptured airline like we had last night on the Lexington corridor, or we have an individual, like we had the other night in the Rutgers Tube, where, the person really thought the tracks were for him, and he walked from Brooklyn to Manhattan on the F train, on the F line.
Can I just ask something about that? Because that is distressing for a number of reasons.
Sure.
York Street and East Broadway both have the Omega booths in them.
Mm-hmm.
These were not staffed. This was the time of day when they would have ridden trains versus being in the booths?
Well, no, but the police, yeah, that's true, Albert. But, I mean, Andrew, they did respond, but the person jumped in front of the train, emerged, but came out unscathed, and then emerged from under the train inside the tunnel, and then he was able to he just started running in the tunnel.
Excuse me. Can I just follow up on
Sure.
what Andrew said? Which it has been my understanding that ever since 9/11 and the enhanced security measures, that there is 24/7 security at any tunnel entrance that anything that goes underwater, anything that connects anything. So wasn't there somebody in that there to see this?
Yes, however, the police are not going to pursue, and rightly so, they're not going to pursue an individual into the tunnel when the power is still on. So that's what had to be done. We had to remove the power, ensure the safety of the officer, and then they pursued the person into the tunnel.
But they didn't see him going from under the train. I mean, they're supposed to be extra alert. That's for our safety.
Yeah, that's fair. I don't think it would be fair without them being here for me to criticize the way the police handled that incident. We certainly know that they eventually did apprehend the individual, but again, not until there was a considerable disruption to service.
I know from various briefings that we're working on, all of the tunnels will have this security system in them.
Mm-hmm.
So when an individual enters the tunnel who is not authorized, I assume it will set off.
Oh, absolutely. Cameras, alarms, everything. Definitely.
That can't happen sooner. I'm sorry.
Sure. No problem. So, when we have those types of incidents, those major disruptions, if you will, we want to make sure that we're providing clear and accurate communication to the customer. I responded to the incident yesterday up at the Lexington Avenue line, and I'll be honest with you. While I wasn't unhappy with what I saw, I certainly felt we could have been doing better. And it's about getting information to our platform controllers, to our station forward-facing, customer-facing personnel who respond to these incidents. Listen, we have the people who respond to take corrective measures, but also as we engage the customers, we want to make sure that our people are equipped with good information and good tools to provide information to our customers. So that's part of this plan as well. As part of our strategy, we want to target additional personnel. We want to hire people, and we're doing that. We want to focus on the equipment that is most critical to the infrastructure, that the one that is, the assets whose failure to operate creates the biggest impact to service, and so that's what our focus is on. It includes these 5 critical components: track and signal maintenance, which I'll give you some numbers on that in a minute. Obviously, cars. We have to have working vehicles. System safety and cleanliness. We want to improve the environment. While the stations obviously are transient, you don't spend a lot of time in the station if things are working properly, but we still want to make that environment a little bit better. As I mentioned, customer communication is important, but then also when things go awry, we want to make sure that we are working as a team. We have dedicated personnel to manage these incidents better. So as I mentioned, track and signals is key to this. Why? Because they are the drivers of the delays. They are the drivers of 79% of the major incidents. Incidents like yesterday that cause delays in the system. While there are other drivers of the nominal delays, less impacting delays, when we have stoppages, when we have stoppages in service, when we have major incidents, most of the time it's a track or signal failure. And so that's why those assets, if you will, are being given the most attention. So 30% of all the major incidents are caused by these signal issues. And so today, 40% of our signal equipment is more than half a century old. That says a lot. Even the first generation modernized signals, if you will, are over 50 years old. They were modernized in the 50s. All right. And that equipment does break down. Now, I will be one to say that age alone should not necessarily mean failure, should not translate to failure, because we still have to maintain it. But I think in the past and heretofore, we have focused more on safety and making sure while this equipment is aged, we want to make sure it works. We want to make sure that it's not failing in a manner that creates, damage to equipment or even worse. But now, as I said earlier, we're giving more attention to making sure that this aged equipment is reliable. Doesn't necessarily have to mean that it's, that it doesn't work because it's old. You know, some of us have older cars, if you will, that that still work, that still run. You know, and there's no reason why that can't be, even with our assets. And so we're focusing on that. We want to also expedite a repair program. When things do break down or when they are defective, a lot of times they're not, I shouldn't say break down, but a lot of times when you have a defect on a component, that defect doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to create a failure or create a delay. But if you don't get to it and address it soon, eventually will. And so part of this strategy is doing a better job on correcting the defects, addressing and closing out the work orders on the signal, on the signal equipment. So we have about 1,300 signals that have some form of a defect on them. Again, it doesn't necessarily have to translate into a failure, but eventually could. And that's why it's important that we address that. And so this plan is to address those 1,300s by the end of this year. 1,300 defects by the end of this year.
Do the signals, when they suffer a defect of some sort or a failure, does that in itself send a signal to the RCC or something that something is out of whack?
It can, yes. Some of them do, Andrew. Maybe not to the RCC, but certainly at the local tower. So maintainers, you know, they're trained to look at the meters, to look at the readings of the equipment, and they can, you know, predict when something is going to fail. But what we're also talking about is maybe a wire on a rail connector that's attached to a rail connector that's frayed. The wire may be frayed. That's a defect. That wire and that cable should be replaced before it becomes an actual failure. Please.
Is there any pattern to where those problematic signals are? Are they concentrated on any one line? Because, you know, you do have a repair program. This would give you information to see whether certain squads might not be doing the best job that they can.
If I didn't know better, I'd say you read ahead of this presentation, and because we're going to get into that a little bit. Yeah.
No, because I've been doing transit oversight for the last 32 years,
Yeah.
so I don't know.
Great, great. So to answer your question, right? We know where the hot spots are. We know exactly where our most problem, and it's pretty somewhat intuitive. It's the central business district for several reasons. The central business district has not gotten the modernization that the outer boroughs really have gotten. The Lexington Avenue corridor, the equipment on that corridor is really old. Again, it goes back to the 50s. A lot of it is electro-pneumatic in nature. The A line, the 8th Avenue corridor, that equipment a lot of that is the original equipment. It was installed in the 1930s. Okay, it's being modernized now on the 6th Avenue line, but again, it certainly makes sense. But then you go to areas like in the South Bronx, Long Island City has some hot spots. Downtown Brooklyn has some hot spots, and so we have a good sense of where the problems are based on this heat map, and that's what we're tackling. Yes, I'm not sure why that is, because that's a modernized line, but yeah, we do have some challenges up there that we have to address. Please.
I just want to know, and I'll wait if it's going to be so. Are you going to be discussing customer communication in more detail than you just mentioned in the
I
past?
will, yeah.
Okay,
Toward
then
the
I
end of
will
the
wait.
presentation.
That's all I wanted to know.
Thank you. Sure, yeah. But you know, the signal system is powered by, while some of it is pneumatic, it is powered by electricity. And as we said, one of our partners, if you will, in service is Con Edison. You know, when we have a power problem, that can be most disruptive. We had one a couple of Sundays ago, I think it was a Sunday, where they had a major outage in Brooklyn with one of their substations, and in J Street, the area of J Street, and it really resulted in a major disruption. And why? It's pretty simple. It's because while you may have a very local power failure, the signal system the signals that are dependent on that particular locally supplied power can go for several stations. And so if you lose power there, you can lose an entire corridor. and thus service stops. And that's why it's most disruptive when we have a power failure. And over the last 12 months, these power issues have increased, and we've had thousands of delays as a result of loss of Con Edison power.
And you know, if we didn't have the redundancy that we have in the system, like
Yeah.
the Lexington and 7th Avenue corridors interchangeable in Brooklyn, and the 6th and the 8th Avenue interchangeable, we'd have even worse problems.
Sure.
Yeah.
In updating the power and signals, and maybe it's CBTC, is there an opportunity where you can stop it so it's not the not the entire corridor that goes out, so that it's stopped in its immediate locale?
So there's a few approaches that we're taking with that, and I'll maybe go. Let me just get through the next slide, Ellen, and I'll go into that a little bit more. But as we said, power is a major problem, and so what's happening now? Con Edison has been ordered by the Public Service Commission to undertake a project, an initiative to stabilize the power. So what does that mean? As Andrew mentioned, we have a lot of redundancy even in the power. We have the redundancy in certainly in the network, but we have redundancy with a lot of the traction power. We don't have that level of redundancy with the low, what we call low tension power. Okay, the electricity that powers the station lighting, the signals, and the lights. There's not a lot of redundancy with that. And so what we're doing is, one, we're improving the Con Ed network. Their manholes and their feeders that actually feed our signals. Con Ed is doing a major inspection of that. They're especially identifying those locations. They generally will inspect all of their manholes every 8 years. They're going to inspect our manholes once a year to make sure that they're okay. When there are defects, they're going to address and correct those defects more immediately. They're replacing a lot of the wires and cables in those manholes. They're going from aluminum wiring to copper wiring. You remember back in the 40s and 50s, there was a lot of aluminum wire that was installed in a lot of houses, and it's proven to be problematic, and so a lot of people remove that wiring, and so they have to do the same thing. And then they're hiring contractors to perform special inspections of our power inside on our system, as well as the signals themselves. So Con Ed is thoroughly engaged. We are very closely connected. In fact, last night it was kind of funny. We thought the problem, yet last night on Lex was a Con Ed problem, was a problem because at almost the exact same time, they had a dip in their power feeders. And we thought that might have caused what we had, but it wasn't that. It was a ruptured airline. But so I just want to say that, again, we are really engaged in Con Ed because, again, when that network fails, it really has broad impacts to our system. Water is another problem. It's been said, our strength of New York is, New York is a port city, right? And that's one of our strengths, but it's also it creates our biggest vulnerability as well. And again, going back to Sandy, we certainly experienced that, and we have to take measures to prevent storm surges and prevent water from getting into our tunnels. But really, it's the groundwater that creates the biggest challenges for us. It's water that's just resident in the rock bed and the like that finds its way into our system, and that causes delays as well, ultimately. 20% of the track incidents really are related to the root cause of it is water and debris that clogs the drains and the like. So that's something that we're addressing as well.
I asked this of Darrell when he was at the last meeting. Are we investigating how many third-party water intrusion incidents there are, from buildings and or businesses that are adjacent?
That is part of our inspection process. Our engineers inspect. They're required to find the root cause of what is the source of this water. And what they do is they'll go topside and we'll put this dye in the drains and the like. And if we see that it comes out that color, then we know the source. And We have a problem. There's a Con Ed vault, for example, at Nevin Street that we know is causing a water problem. So we address it. So again, with the heat map, we have a good sense of where our vulnerabilities are with respect to water, and so we have an approach and a plan to attack it. And how are we doing that? We have our special teams that go out and they seal these leaks. They use chemical grouting, and we have contractors doing it as well. We have our street grates, 40,000 street grates that are necessary to provide the proper ventilation in the system. But again, it creates a vulnerability because it provides a means of ingress with the water. But proper maintenance is required. We have to make sure that the drains are clean. So we allow the water into the vents, of course, but they have to be properly drained into our system. And so we are taking steps to improve improve that system as well. And then we just need to clean better. The track, is littered, but there's a lot of assets that experience litter. People litter in the streets, they litter in front of buildings, they litter in parks, and we have personnel who are whose role is to remove debris and to reduce the fire hazards as a result. But we've got to do that better. We've got to do a better job at that, and that's part of the focus as well. We do have a good team, a large team, but we are increasing our resources. Our goal is to hire 300 more track cleaners by the end of this year. And yes, please.
Since everybody else is interrupting, I hate to do this. What is happening with that new initiative that Joe announced about fining people who are throwing garbage on, making the public aware about it? How is that proceeding? It was announced, and then doesn't seem to be anything happening.
Yep. The board approved it yesterday, and so now the fine has been increased to $100. And NYPD, though, still is primarily charged with enforcing that.
But when is it going to go into effect? Immediately?
I believe so, yeah. Yeah.
And are there going to be more receptacles, garbage receptacles on the platform so that, because a couple of people spoke to me and said, great, I can't find a garbage can, and so I should just carry my garbage with me. I mean, and I found that the other day. I'm trying to think. I think it was 23rd Street on the number 6. I can't remember which station it was, but there were just no receptacles that I could find. I'm sure if I walked from one end of the platform to the other, I could have found one. But that has come up. So is there going to be something done in conjunction with the $100 fine?
Right. So there are no immediate plans to increase the population of trash receptacles on the stations. They are strategically located.
Nope.
They are strategically located, to where most of the people are on the platform. But we have to bear in mind, we have to balance that. We have to balance that with having the trash receptacles on the platform and not creating any challenges in terms of the flow of passengers when the platforms get crowded as well. So yeah, we certainly have 100% station coverage with respect to or system coverage, I should say, with respect to trash receptacles. Every station has a trash receptacle.
A.
No, have several. I shouldn't say A.
Some don't have more than one.
I would beg to.
Start calling in the stations that I know that don't have.
Yeah.
I hate to be.
No, I welcome that. I'd be interested to know where we have only one, because that's not the direction that I've given. So if that's the case, I'm interested in that. Okay. Yeah. I'm going to try and move through. Yep. So, but yeah, we want to do better in cleaning, and what you see there in the background picture is the team using a new device that we're deploying, the mobile vacs. We have 2 of them out there already, and we've purchased 10 more. We expect them to be delivered beginning next month, excuse me. And what is that providing? Yeah, it provides a better way to pick the trash up. It's more efficient, it's quicker. But because because we have this automated way of picking up trash, we're not going to reduce the workforce. We're actually, again, increasing the cleaning workforce. And what is that providing us? That allows them to do a much more intense cleaning. They scrape the track, they scrape the debris, and clean and clear the drains a little bit better. Because they can pick up the litter more quickly. They have more time available to them, and so they're using that time wisely by doing a much more intensive cleaning of the track. And I'm really happy with that. Not necessarily, Andrew. No, they will do it under track. If you notice, the machine stays on the platform, so it doesn't go onto the track. The hose is long enough to go to the track. It is. And so what we'll do is we may run around them for a couple of trains because they can get in and out of there in about 15 minutes, maybe a half hour. They start around 11 o'clock at night. So it's not too disruptive to those who are riding at night. It's insulated, though. Yeah, it's insulated. Yeah, definitely. Oops.
I don't think this has ever really been addressed, but what is the impact of the rodent population on the track and, their feces and do they chew on the wires? I mean,
yeah, we've had some incidents where, where we've had, rodents that have created some real challenges for us. Not just on the tracks. They've gotten into, believe it or not, into relay rooms and into towers and chewed on the wires there. You know what one of the bigger challenges that they create is the rodents carry the food into the drains, and it eventually masticizes, and that's what clogs a lot of the drains. So it's very interesting that's one of the bigger challenges that creates for us. Yeah. So I'm going to try and get through this a little more quickly. So we're dispatching teams to expedite repair of track. We have 3 levels of defects with tracks. A priority 1 gets addressed immediately, and then a priority 2, which doesn't necessarily translate into a failure, but certainly could. And so we want to give attention to those more quickly. We have a backlog, and we want to expedite the resolution of those defects, that backlog. 52,000, again, we're looking at this heat map, 52,000 feet of detected track issues is what we need to address. And we are very much at work doing that. Half of our tracks still include the rail joints. And that, believe it or not, those joints is where overwhelmingly so, most of rail breaks occur. So what are we doing about that? We are tripling the rate of installing continuous welded rail. We have a really good program where we do that, but we're going to increase that. We're also installing the 50,000 friction pads. What are the friction pads? It's literally these rubber pads that lie between the rail and the plate upon which the rail sits. And what that does, it doesn't only provide a smoother ride, which is, again, what the public likes to hear, but it creates resiliency. And so the rail is not, even a new rail can break if its bed is not resilient. So that creates the resiliency, creates less of a likelihood that you'll get these rail breaks. Again, things happen, okay? Even when you have a system that's in a state of good repair, it's these electromechanical devices, things fail, things happen. And so we have to be able to respond to these things more quickly. And so we've had these combined action teams, we call them the CAT teams, that are strategically located primarily in the Central Business District. And so we're going to increase that. We're going to go with 12 combined action teams across the system. Again, primarily in the Central Business District, but you see also at Upper Manhattan and going into the Bronx and Brooklyn as well. 5. We have 5 now, and we're going to 12. Yeah, so that's correct, Mott Avenue. Mm-hmm. So what is the goal? And this is a very aggressive goal. We want to go from 45 minutes response average down to 15. And we are providing vehicles to do that and a better strategy. And we're not there yet. I have to say, I think we're down to about 34 minutes on average now responding to an incident. But that's an improvement, definitely. So Another contributor or driver of failures is not the biggest, but it's certainly when it goes wrong, it can go wrong big. Just ask the folks on that F train at Broadway Lafayette, right? And so we want to improve car reliability also. What are we doing to do that? Well, we're going to address where the biggest failures are. 40% of the failures are door malfunctions. All right. Yes, the system is old, but again, the cars are 22 years old, but again, I don't believe that necessarily translates into failure if we have a good maintenance program. You're right. Yeah, exactly, right? So not quite 60, but because we're brothers, the R32 and I. We're twins almost. Yeah, exactly. So, but we need to address that, and the door malfunctions is the biggest driver of car failures, and so that's what we're doing, working to improve. But again, even the newer cars may break down. Excuse me, before we do that, we want to go with the overhaul capacity. The newer cars, one of the things that we certainly have learned, even with a new fleet, you have to invest. You have to try to get out there and overhaul those cars within 7 years and 14 years to make sure that the components don't fail and create the delay. So we're expanding our overhaul capacity, really maximizing the shop, having more people working in the shops at night, and so to get more cars out. And we've actually made some improvement with that. We are getting cars out of the shops much more quickly and providing a much more availability of cars to customer service. Doesn't necessarily mean we provide more service because of this, but at least it means we have a much higher spare factor.
Have you been told yet the installation of the new digital screens, how many cars have to be taken out at a time for that?
Well, we generally do that during an inspection cycle. So we'll put that screen in without having to take that car out of service. It's out of service already because of its inspection and maintenance, and that's when we try to get it done. But again, when things do go awry, we want to be able to respond more quickly. So we've increased our emergency response for cars as well. They're in vehicles primarily along the right-of-way, and we're adding 20 pre-positioned emergency response teams at 12 locations. And here's where you see them. A little bit outside of the Central Business District, although they are in the Central Business District as well, they get out a little further a little further out. Oh man, there should be a C in there, right? Yeah, WYC. Oh wow, okay. Ooh, good pickup. Yeah, exactly. So, but now we also have an issue with capacity in the cars. Some of the cars are just really crowded, and so we're adding cars to trains where possible, such on the G line, but also on the C line. That is limited to, dependent, I should say, on the arrival of the famous R179s, but hopefully that'll be taking place in the near future as well. Less popular amongst a lot of people. I've gotten a lot of complaint letters about this, but we are going to pilot at least removing some seats from the shuttle as well as the the L train, excuse me, as a way to add some more riders in the cars.
I was going to say, which shuttle, 42nd Street?
Yes, 42nd Street shuttle, yes. And then again, we're doing some things to upgrade the cars. New lighting, new poles. Andrew spoke about the signs, the electric signs in some of the cars. And so we're doing things to improve the interior of the vehicles as well. Again, to just create a better experience for our riders. But then, how about the environment? How about where you wait for trains? Can we do that? Our plan is to do that. While safety certainly is our top priority, we want to provide law enforcement at the stations and the like, because customer safety is important. We want to be able to make sure that like our employees, our customers and passengers can get into a station, get on their train, and move on. So that's important. And so to do that, we've asked NYPD to increase their presence. at certain stations, and to my understanding, they have been cooperative and responsive to that. And as we talked earlier, they will be certainly instrumental in the enforcing the littering problem. So why is that so important? Littering does create fires. The litter on the tracks does create fires. We've improved our cleaning program considerably, but we still get some fires. We had 700, upwards of 700 each year. I think that's gotten a little bit better. As we saw the slide earlier, it was 5,700 in 1 year. But that's even that has come down. There's I think maybe 2 years ago, I think we had upwards of 900 fires. So we're doing better with that, but we can always do even more.
What was the major cause of the fires? Because it's not in the books anymore. It's debris.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is, definitely.
Basically litter.
Yeah. Now, I will say this as well, though, Andrew. You have to have three things for a fire. You have to have the combustible, which is the litter. You got to have the igniter, okay, which that's on us most of the time. Yeah, sometimes a fire is caused by someone, throwing a cigarette. We've had that. But no, by and large, it's the sparks from the third rail. And that's on us. We have to make sure that we maintain the height of those the third rail, so that when the shoe beam, when the current collector goes onto the third rail, it's not creating that arc, because that arc is what ignites the debris. And of course, oxygen is the other thing. But so that's part of that is on us, but we need the public support as well to maintain that. So we also want to communicate to to the public and to our customers. We want to educate them on things. And so to that end, we are, we generated and created a public awareness campaign, and this is part of it. Of course, Chairman Loda started that off by announcing this to the press a little over a month ago, and to the media, and publicized it, but we want to do more of that. Homelessness is obviously a big issue, and that creates some challenges for us with, most
Excuse me. Is that all you're going to talk about with communications?
No, we'll do more. So, but homelessness is on the rise. A lot of sick customers are people who, may have, mental issues, they may be emotionally disturbed, and the like, and so we have to address that as well with our partners within NYPD. When customers become sick, on the train, it does happen. We have people who pass out, they feel ill. We want to be able to address that more quickly, and so we're pre-positioning more EMTs. We're going from 5 on the 8th Avenue corridor to 12 at strategically placed locations, so that they can respond to the ill customer more quickly. We're expanding also, as I said, going from 5 to 12.
Excuse me.
Yes.
That's the 8th Avenue. I live on the east side. There have been many delays for sick passengers.
Right.
Are you adding any EMTs on the 4, 5, and 6?
We are, and these are the locations. So, again,
But your thing up there just talked about the 8th Avenue, your slide before.
right.
And in your presentation.
That was the pilot, and now this is the expansion. So you see 86th, 59th, Grand Central, Atlantic Barclays, 149th Street, Grand Concourse, Brooklyn Bridge. That's where we are strategically locating them. Because again, we have to be responsive to the Lexington corridor. It's the only line on the east side, right, other than 2nd Avenue subway now. So we will be cleaning our stations with more heavy-duty cleaning. We do have teams that do this now, but they do so every 6 weeks. We want to increase that frequency to every 4 weeks, and to get them out there to do the heavy-duty cleaning. We want to repaint and repair a lot of the tiles. We are working on our elevators and escalators more, and actually we're seeing some improvement. There are some outliers, obviously, with certain elevators, but for the most part, we see the reliability numbers going up, and that's good to see. Transforming customer communications, so important to be able to talk with our customers and to communicate when things go awry. We are not effectively doing that right now. It's not timely, it's not reliable, and we can do better. And that's going to take a little more time. We are building an infrastructure. We are building a program, and I look forward to where that goes. How are we doing so? We're revising our communications protocols even amongst ourselves as employees and the way we provide information to each other. Because when we do that, right, then we can provide better communication and clearer communication to our customers and to our employees who interface with the customers. Again, I went out to that incident last night, and again, I thought we were giving information, but I found that the platform controllers, the station supervisors who were on the scene, even some of the managers, didn't have the latest service strategy information in the face of that delay. They didn't have up-to-the-minute information, and I had to provide that information to them. And that's not good. If they're relying on me, then we're not in a good place.
Do you also give it to the token booth clerk? They're not called token booth clerks.
Station agents.
Station agents.
Exactly. So they're going to be receiving.
Most passengers, I don't call them customers, I still call them passengers, go to the station agent booth when there is something happening.
Right.
And I can't tell you how many times, and that I can tell you just at 77th Street, my stop on the east side, that they'll say, I don't know, and then I'll say, could you please call, and then I identify who I am, and I say, could you please, you have the phone. I don't. Could you please call Central and find out exactly what the situation is?
And that's what we're trying to improve.
But I can't tell you how many times, and very recently, that I've just heard I don't know.
Right. And again, that's where we see a big opportunity for improvement. But also the means by which we digitally communicate to our customers as well is what we're improving. Improving the website, creating an app, a better app for our customers is where we'll be going also.
And even the GO notices have already been improved. I've seen a difference
Yes,
in them.
we've
They now
recently
tell
changed
you
them.
what is being accomplished, as opposed to just there'll be no service between
Right. That's part
Friday
of the
night
change as well.
and,
Yes.
Just worried about your heart out at 1.
Yeah.
And wondering, what if you have much more, if there's an opportunity for you to come back?
Sure.
That,
Yeah, we could do that.
Because not knowing how much more, and
Yeah,
thinking we have questions.
Let me see. There's not that many more slides. But let me just finish up with at least the communications, and then we'll go to the Q&A. And we can provide this. We can provide this for you as well. Again, it's important for you to know that, and this is to your question. We want to provide more of a presence outside of the booth, quite frankly. We want to provide more of a presence in the mezzanine, on the platform, with our customer service. We call them ambassadors, okay? And they will have devices with information, up-to-the-minute information. They'll be able to receive communication directly from the RCC, and be able to tell you what your alternatives to service are in the midst of disruption, but also just even in the absence of a disruption of service, to tell you how to get around, or when we have a diversion in service, to tell you how to get around. Very important, and that's going to I think that's going to go a long way.
They use the correct script.
Yes. Well, that's just it, Andrew. It'll be readily available to them. Some of our conductors, no, you're right. Some of our conductors, actually, we're going to pilot giving tablets to our conductors as well. We're piloting it very soon on the E-line, and they will have devices. With the advent of transit wireless and the connectivity in the station, it provides a better way to communicate to our employees. And so we want to be able to do that.
There is another kind of communication, and I have brought this up about, I don't know how many times, and with Joe directly, and with your predecessor and everything else. There is there is a lack of communication. I won't say no, but it happens. Whenever there is a delay, or whenever trains are taken out of service and or a train is not running at a certain station. Again, I'll use my 77th Street station as an example. Where there is a bus stop right outside, you're told, first of all, you got to go half the time down into the station, and then there's a yellow line, or you're told by the station agent or the ambassador, I love the titles we give all these people, that the train isn't running. So you go upstairs, there is a load of people all congregating at the same bus stop. The bus drivers have not been told that the train is not running. And I have been at the site personally of at least 3 near riots because the people in the street who can't take the train and have to get someplace, and the bus drivers say, no more. And then the people who say, I paid my fare already, and the train isn't running. And the bus driver says, I don't know what you're talking about. And they don't.
Interesting.
Why don't we? And then the police are called, and they don't know from either the bus drivers or the station people what's going on. There is a, this is not the first time that I've talked about
I'll take that away as an answer.
There is a lack of communication internally between different parts of the New York City Transit. I won't even get with the others, and with other agencies that are involved or could be involved.
He's got the message.
It is horrendous.
I got you.
He's got it.
So this is a summary of the action plan. Again, I won't go through everything.
Could you add that to your action plan and communication, please?
I appreciate that. Yes, absolutely.
But I'm
Better
telling you,
communication.
it's not the first time or the 10th time
Got it.
that I have brought this up.
So I'm going to give it 5 more minutes, Andrew, and then I'm going to have to really go.
No, I'll wait the 5 minutes if he has a whole list. I have.
Well, Witten has 5 minutes, so.
Andrew, can I ask? Can we ask that? I'm having trouble here with the mics. So can we try to use one mic at a time?
Okay.
It's a static issue.
Yeah, that one isn't.
It's not. It's the system. I just checked it.
All right, but this is pretty much it. I mean, this just talks about the amount of personnel that we have. But I think this is, I'll end it here because this gives a good summary of all the assets that we're going to really be investing in. All right. Any questions? Further questions? Please.
Oh, there we go. First of all, I do have, I'm going to be quick and brief and try to do the best. First, your ambassadors, fantastic. One
Great.
thing I'm going to say is the day that we had the derailment of the Q train, they were up to date. They knew what they were doing. For regarding the A line, if my colleague Edith was here, she would give you the dictionary book, which I'm not going to do. But the Q train procedure that day we had the minor derailment should use as an example. Interesting. Because that's emergency response to me. Assess right downstairs at standby, shuttle buses on standby, options of the other ways of getting to another subway station, or if another wheelchair had to get on, accessory was on standby. That's the communication that needs to be used as an example. I was there, and yes, I lived not far from there, but you know, it looked like it was a nice team play. Well done. That's a compliment. Cool it down. Cool. Let me get to my point. I don't like interrupting today. Regarding your lidding procedures, nice to know we're doing the tunnels.
Our littering procedures there?
The lidding garbage train,
Yes.
whatever you want to call it anymore, because I have 5 different names I don't want to use. Again, you know, it's nice to know you do the inside tunnels, but the outside, like on the Brighton or the Sea Beach, like I know I understand they're doing construction, but at the same time, a little more cleaning should be done on those. That has never been. Yes, I live in Brooklyn. I do have outside trains, but the 2 railroad lines, the N, the Q/B, don't get the necessary cleaning. It is, and I can tell you this, as Trudy and Stuart will agree with me. Garbage when you have those garbage cans, I only see 1 at certain stations. A miracle to see 2, but there's times that NYPD do not stop them of throwing garbages on the tracks. And technically, your outside gets more fires because of the high heat, the sun.
Oxygen.
Exactly, and also if you do science, sometimes the sunlight can actually start a fire with a light beam because the tracks are silver. High beams could cause a melt or a derail. It depends of the angle. The main concern is when you mentioned power issues in the beginning of your PowerPoints, May was the other issue where all the trains were not communicating where the train was rerouted. That needs to be worked on. Even this past Sunday, there were a lot of confusions. Thank God we had MTA buses, but again, high heat will cause always a power outage. Even when I was a little kid, thank God trains know how to reroute to another line.
Okay. I'm going to maybe just give one more person if someone has a question.
Last question. It's a very ambitious plan, very well thought out plan. Could you share with the committee whether you see any issues regarding implementation? Are there any funding challenges that you have with any aspect of implementing this plan? It doesn't talk about time. It doesn't talk about timetable. It doesn't talk about things that this oversight body is interested in. And maybe we're in a position to leverage your help if there are things that might be impediments to fulfilling the goal.
What I'd like to do with that is two things. One, Deborah, I think can take an action to give some responses to that. But also, I take you up on your invitation to come back to give you a progress report on where we are. We provide that. We provide a weekly report to our funding partner. You know, so that, you know, we can, and we meet amongst ourselves on a weekly basis. So maybe in the very near future, Andrew, I can come and give you a report on where we are with this plan. Most of this work is supposed to occur, you know, by the end of 2018. Some of it is much sooner than that. We have a timeline and what we call a glide chart yeah, those have all begun. You know, but one of the bigger challenges, quite frankly, is track access. Okay, and I think it's going to be very important. We talked about the public outreach and the public awareness. We have to provide the access to our employees and to our contractors to really make this work, and we're doing it in a way and using a strategy that is different than we've done before. Fast track, it'll be like fast track on steroids. It really.
Can we get a copy of that? That's a wonderful chart that you put up there.
Sure.
Can we get a printout of that?
I think we actually, when this first came out, we sent it to you.
Yeah.
In a different format that you can actually, that you can read, but we'll send it again, yeah.
Yeah.
I'll come up to the office then.
Yeah, this is almost impossible to read on a printout.
Yeah.
We'll give it to them for you.
Absolutely.
But that is just, I've been criticizing, that is wonderful.
Okay. Appreciate that. Okay, so I said that was the last one, but you have your hand up. One more.
This is regarding subway service changes.
Right.
I couldn't get the 9, 16, and 17 weekend train advisory. I put the cursor under the submit, on the submit button, number 3. It didn't appear on the screen, which is annoying. I contacted the MTA executive director, who looks like Juan Epstein from Welcome Back Carter, and she gave me this sob story, which I can use for toilet tissue. This is getting ridiculous.
Right.
Okay, it doesn't matter if I'm printing and or saving it. If I want to save it, or if I just want to check it, I should be able to do it. So if I put the cursor under this button here, and it's not going anywhere, it could be a problem with the website.
It's on the website. You're talking about the website, right?
Right.
And 9/16, you mean last weekend?
9, 16, and 17.
The week before.
So it was 2 weekends ago.
2 weekends ago, right.
So if you still have that train advisory, please email it to me as a PDF file, and then I can save it, because I'm not getting through the Juan Epstein from Welcome Back Carter.
Okay. Take an action on that?
We'll work through Deborah and get you.
Okay, I'm going to have to run. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And again, I'll be more
We
than
wish
happy.
you the best of success in this, and we'll be happy to help in any way we can.
Appreciate it. Take care, everyone.
Thanks. Okay, so let's move on to the chair's report. We're a little out of... Yes, go ahead, Ellen.
That's my question then, but it's something that I think follows on to Stuart a little bit. One of the areas that Winton talked about that I thought was really interesting was the number of track miles that are getting replaced and the number of signals that's all part of this plan, and thinking as one of the communication tools, if they had a dashboard, since now we're really happy with the operational dashboard, that's showing the progress, how far do they have to go, and how much are they doing in this program? Because again, it will help to build for the capital program, some momentum to see their accomplishments as they're happening and build excitement for the investments that are needed and give a realm of how big the problem is and the progress they're making. So that's the thing that I thought, if those tools are put out, a group like us can help add voice to them more.
And he did commit to you, Andrew, with keeping you up to date with progress. And
You're very soft-spoken today.
please don't do that again. The point is, what Ellen is saying, we need to track this. He hasn't specified the format, and I certainly think that we could follow up and ask
Yeah.
him to present it in a format that is meaningful that way.
He's going to be
See if
giving
they'd be
progress
open.
reports
Well,
every
if he
month.
can, if Winton can come back, which seems like a possibility, which
Yeah.
would be terrific to have a little bit of a part two, because that was,
After there's a sufficient amount of time to see if what has been implemented, and because some of this is not immediate, the track inspections and the continuous welded
they've
rail
all-
installation, that's immediate.
well, I
And
think
the
there's
vacuum
there's
things are
two
immediate.
things. One is there wasn't that much time to ask the amount of questions there may be, and to be able, he presented an awful lot, and there's some that were
An awful
very
lot.
meaty that could have had a bit more conversation. So there could be a value of, this is part one, and next month is part two, if he had the availability. And then in 4 or 5 months, because it sounded like, no, they're already accomplishing things, and to get in on it earlier has a value.
Andrew, I'm not even going to try to use this microphone.
Fine.
Yeah.
No, it's okay. I think I can talk loud.
No, you can't hear it in the recording, which we have to have for public.
Because otherwise that static
Yes.
is
So I'd like to
impossible.
add something to what
Okay,
Ellen
now,
said.
can I just add one thing, which I am so concerned that when I brought up about the communication and between other agencies, it was like nobody had ever said that to him before. He took notes, I'm pleased with that. But you know how long I've been bringing this
Yes.
up. There was an incident 2 years ago
I
where I
remember.
said it was like the day of the locust,
Yeah.
whatever. So if we could maybe send a letter or put in writing
When we send him a thank you,
about
we will reiterate that point.
Because the interagency, intercommunication, it happened again a week before last. And it is at the 63rd Street with the F and the Q and everything else. And there was nothing there, and people were there. They had to go down like 2 or 3 levels,
Yes.
and people were pissed as hell. And they came out, and then they were going to the bus stop.
No,
It
we
was-
remember, Trudy, we do.
Yeah, but he didn't seem to know about it.
No.
And between Stuart and I think we've brought this up about 10 times at various
We brought it up to
meetings.
to the bus folks. We didn't bring it up to Winton, I don't believe.
No, but we
So
brought
this
it
would be
up
the
to
first-
his
Predecessors to
predecessor.
Winton, but-
Yeah, predecessors
Excuse
to
me, we
Winton.
brought it
Yeah,
up to
Winton
his
wasn't head of
predecessor,
Subways at that point in
And we brought it
time.
up to, I have personally brought it up to Joe
Yeah.
any number of times. So he should know about it unless they don't
Joe's got a
communicate
few things
with
on his
each
mind.
other.
Yes, Stuart.
I'll play with the mic now. Okay, so just wanted to piggyback on something Ellen said, but just not to lose the thought that Trudy has. Remember when Chair Loda was here, we did bring this up to him, so he's put that on his tickler as well. So there has to be if there is a letter, in my opinion, there has to be a unified effort so that we're not circling back around and people think that, we did get when the fellow from bus operations was talking about the new command center that they were building and how they have a seat. It's more than that, okay? Trudy talks about signage, letting customers know before you even enter the system what's going on. So maybe even having a meeting devoted to passenger communication might be something that we want to do, because it's not limited to the transit division. It involves the surface division. It involves the people who manage that's surface, yeah, and other interdependencies, like even he said about police, but and you did too. But back to what Ellen said. So he was cut off when he was talking about new strategies for track access. And I think we need to have him talk more about that, because for us to evaluate whether these fast track strategies are successful, or whatever they're going to call them, or whatever the technique is, I think we need more information. He didn't say whether they're going to cluster. He showed us the dot map of where the problems were. He didn't say how they're going to attack the problem. He did try to say that customer inconvenience is a factor, but he said it in a different way. But he didn't tell us the how, and so that we can evaluate whether it's lip service or whether there's true change. I think we need to follow up, and I think Ellen's on the right track, no pun intended.
One thing that you definitely got out of his last statement, which I have heard in various degrees from other MTA officials, is you can expect line shutdowns while they do this work, a la fast track. More of that. Now, we hope that we do have this redundancy. If you shut the Cranberry tube, you can use the Rutgers tube and the Joralemon versus the Clark Street tubes. But where you don't have redundancy, there has to be substitute
But we want to
transportation.
we want to see this bearing fruit,
Yes.
and intense scheduling, like Carol's husband does. There's intense planning before.
I think there's, and I think they're still working on how all this shakes out. I've heard people talk about bus substitutions and night bus kind of, there's all kinds of options out there on the table that could, be part of it.
Thank you. At the last meeting, the chairman said that the pilot program of the vacuum machines was not entirely positive. Couldn't pick up bottles, for example, I recall. Today, I heard that they're buying 10 more. Could somebody follow up and just ask if it's a different machine?
They have the two new vacuum trains, and now they have the portable handheld vacs, which I think was what was in the picture, which I was a little worried was so close to the third rail, which apparently is not a problem. And that thing remains on the platform, and then they go down on the track. That, I think, can pick up bottles. The train one cannot.
But even if the motivation is predominantly reducing fires, I think it's picking up the fire-producing stuff. And wouldn't they have, there are also workers on the track that follow up with the final? That is, yeah.
Yes.
One thing that I definitely agree with everyone saying, the only thing got me very disturbing, that looking at some of the maps, and I was looking at the notes, is now all of a sudden now we have a medical emergencies, but in Brooklyn, to me, it's insulting. Only Atlantic Avenue and Barclays Center. Further down the lines, you have other areas that trains do power light, like Broadway Junction. Soon the 3 and the L will be a connection. And also maybe further down the line, and I can just guess stations. Anyone can back me up on stations in Brooklyn, but there is other stations that you have the room. You have sometimes EMS maybe can stand by even outside during the daytime. I can't say night because I don't know. I'm guessing everything up. One station is not going to solve Atlantic Avenue. Should be still Atlantic, Broadway Junction, and somewhere in the South Brooklyn. It's only showing downtown Brooklyn, and really, to be honest with you, it's insulting.
Yeah, the map was showing hot spots of some of these problems that, for some reason, and I don't know what it is.
There is more hot spots,
There was a
Andrew.
concentration of reported sick passengers and passengers having to be removed from the trains along 8th Avenue corridor, which is why they did that, the pilot.
Yeah, but no disrespect to the 8th Avenue, and no disrespect to the Lex, but 6th Avenue does get sick customers. Broadway line gets sick customers.
I don't think the inference is that no place is exempt from sick customers.
I don't think, to be honest with you, and I'm sorry, Bill, just want to get the sentence out. The concern is, yes, and during the summer, there are always going to be a lot of sick customers because a lot of people I don't know. The heat on the stations are very hot. When it's hot, some people just automatically pass out because they have to wait for a train. There are some trains don't have full air conditioners. There is a time that the homeless level has increased. And glad to see he put that up, but again, when someone gets sick, there is more other lines, not just one line. And
I don't think he said it was one line, Chris.
But he said 8th Avenue.
He said the pilot
Why,
8th
but
Avenue.
again, I'm going to say this. Why is the pilot always has to be on one certain line? 8th Avenue is the A, C, and E. But, excuse me, you have other certain lines that go into different places, not just, how about Broadway, 6th Avenue? They
I
should
don't
be,
think it's the exclusion of anything. It's a pilot. He's expanded. He
I
showed
will
you the
believe it, I
expansion.
will believe it when I see, I will believe it when I see it
Well,
because.
I can't make you believe.
If I can add to that, no, it is not being done. As of last week, there was nothing. And I would also say, in regards to the medical assistance, that there are more hospitals along the corridor on the east side than there are on the west side or anywhere else. It's no,
Maybe that's why there's fewer sick passengers.
No, but you need, very funny, okay? All I'm saying is, Chris is absolutely right. All of the pilots are, I know, Andrew, you're on the west side, and it's wonderful for you, but I'm saying
I
that...
hope I don't have to use it.
And neither do I, thank God. But it's not that. It is that these pilots should be, maybe do 2 stations on the E line and 2 stations on the number 4 or something like that, and spread it around, even when you're doing your pilots.
Actually, if it was up to me, I would have done a pilot in each borough. If it was up to me. But it's not up to me.
I mean,
All boroughs.
part of it.
No,
too-
I want Staten Island also
part of it-
because it's not
but-
fair to you too, Scott.
No, part
All
of it
the-
too. No, part of it too is response, though. I mean, part of it too is response. A lot of what a lot of the stations are trying to. The problem is EMS teams can't get there very quickly. It takes them a while to get there. Broadway Junction is fairly accessible by road. You can probably get an ambulance there pretty quickly, where other places you can't. No, but some of it is, but no, but I'm
We're gonna
more
get
speaking of
progress reports, so.
Chris's comments. I mean, the outlying stations are easier for a squad to get there than 86th Street and
In
Lexington
fact,
Avenue.
Chris, just to use the 8th Avenue corridor as an example, I have heard 2 times when somebody was ill on an 8th Avenue line train, and they ran the train nonstop up to, Columbia Presbyterian Medical Center at 168th Street to get this person to a hospital, rather than bring them out and get them caught on a road, because that was the fastest way to a hospital.
Well, that's a different issue because sometimes it's crowd issues too. But at the same time also is Manhattan, I'm glad. But in Brooklyn, Broadway Junction, I agree with Bill, one thing he did say about Broadway Junction. There is an EMS station 2 blocks from Broadway Junction on Pennsylvania Avenue. And second of all, further down the Atlantic Avenue, it's very heavy. And the last time we had a sick customer that was actually on Atlantic Barclay on the RRT platform, I'm going to say the 2 and 3, or I think 4 or 5, whatever. The bottom line was it took them 10 minutes to get an EMS just to get upstairs of where the person was located. The EMS thought the person was at Grand Army Plaza. That's
That's a screw-up in communication.
not one time. It's been going on at least 10 to 8 times. It's still... Exactly. No, you're right, Scott, yeah. 911. I was just going to say 911. But at the same
They're
time...
not infallible, obviously.
Yeah, but at the same time, further down the line, you do have other connections, and that's...
That kind of mistake, by the way, could cost a life, going to the wrong place.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah.
But
Yes, yeah, and then we have to move along. We have so much to talk about.
Is it on? Is it on? All right. All right. I was also suggesting a different thing. Well, first of all, I don't know why we call it Cranberry Street Tube. We should call it Fulton Street Tube. It's named for Robert Fulton. Because there's 2 Fulton Streets, Manhattan and Brooklyn.
That's probably why we don't.
Oh, it makes sense, but I prefer Fulton over Cranberry. Cranberry's a fruit.
There's no confusion.
Cranberry's a fruit. Anyway. All right. Sorry. Second, I told Ellen this yesterday, and I told the full board this yesterday, and what I would suggest is that the multilingual subway maps, right? The ones that feature multiple flags. I suggest that they should add some flags of the Western Hemisphere for some languages. I'm saying like English, Spanish, French, Portuguese. Clearly, more than one country speaks it. But the maps only show the European flags. like on these versions. So now, of course, you can't fit all the flags on the front and the cover, so you just put multilingual tourist map. But in the back, you should display.
Well, you should have various versions of the map, is what you're really getting at.
Yes.
And I agree.
Or even if you have a single version, at least put more flags in the corresponding.
Well, your comments were definitely taken down yesterday at the board, so.
I'll tell you more about it at the end.
Okay. All right. Let me please move on to the chair's report and then the board report, because there's a lot to tell you.
Yes.
Unfortunately, we have to, with regret, announce today is Angela's last meeting. She's moving on from the PCAC after 4 years with us as an intern, transportation planner, and most recently, planning manager. She is leaving us to join the Department of City Planning as a senior transit specialist. Is that a new title made just for you?
Yes.
Wow.
Wow.
And while we're sorry she's leaving, she's moving to a great position and a fantastic opportunity to make the city function even better.
And we can still talk to her, right?
We can. We can get inside info from her. Please join me in wishing Angela all the best and thanking her for all the amazing work she has done. And as I've worked very close with her on the service monitoring project, I can tell you she will be sorely missed. Yes.
I know,
Yes.
I know I don't interrupt a lot with this, but this today is different. I do also want to say, for the record, I want to thank Angela, because we also did a lot of projects in the past, and there's one thing I'll say this. Sorry, we're going to miss her, but in one way, she's going to be a really good arsenal for the planning, but if planning does not treat you right, we're going to come and get you. And I'm saying that for the record.
She's Belisa-tastic.
And no bad words, Andrew.
Okay.
I heard it already.
All right. A major change has been made in the way that New York City Transit provides information on its performance. At long last, a new dashboard containing updated performance measures has been introduced by the MTA, and you can see it now. It's available at dashboard.mta.info, and an introductory video is on the MTA's YouTube site at youtube.com/MTA info. For years, we have advocated for the addition of new metrics that are more understandable and better reflect the rider's experience to the material that New York City Transit releases to the public, as opposed to, say, terminal on-time performance, since almost nobody rides from terminal to terminal. And now, for the first time, subway performance indicators will show the amount of additional time riders spend waiting for trains that are not meeting their headways, as well as the extra time riders spend on trains that are moving slower than what the schedule is supposed to be. Also included will be a measure of service actually delivered compared with schedules, a metric showing the level of major incidents in the system, and you can do it by line, mean distance between failures for various classes of subway cars, which is of great interest to those that are still relegated to the R32s and R42s, measures of the cleanliness and condition of stations and rail cars, as well as the legacy indicators we have all come to love, such as weight assessment and terminal on-time performance. So all of this is on the website now. You should look at it. You should see how your line is faring, and you should report any comments to the office.
Andrew, can I just put a little context in that? Because this is actually a huge win for PCAC. We've spent 7 years on these indicators and getting them to visualize them, and specifically the excess travel time and wait time, but that they're putting now the number of major delays by cause. And we had meetings, we had demonstrations on how they could do it, and this is...
And by car type, which
type,
is very instructive.
So we've spent several years getting to this point, and they've done it really, really well. And
they
Peter
plan to do
Caffiero
more.
had a lot to do with it,
Yes,
and
he
it
did.
was, and Al Reddy, and they're showing their talents, and it's terrific, so.
Yes, should
So
have
moving
it.
along, the rollout of countdown clocks on the B division is continuing. Stations on the E and G are the latest. The M and the W are getting it in a few days, or by tomorrow, I guess, by tomorrow. While the B division system is a little less precise than the A division, and anybody who looks at them can tell you that, they're not quite as accurate. They don't reflect what's happening between stations, because Bluetooth beacons are actually on the stations. So, for instance, I noticed on several of them, it might have said 8 minutes to the next train, but then shortly after, it'll go to 5 minutes. It'll jump to that, and then it'll jump to 2 minutes. You don't see the incremental countdowns that you do see on the A division. But
Not all the time.
right. Well, that's true
The
too.
A division.
That's true.
Andrew, can I ask
Wait,
you?
let me finish this thought. The A division, of course, has automatic train supervision. The B division does not.
Okay. Now, when is it the new Second Avenue subway is the Q is considered B division, right? I have been asked almost every time I use it, which is a lot, by people who know who I am, why don't we have these are 3 new stations? Why weren't countdown clocks put in? I explained that it's a different division and you can't just do it by itself. But now that you're saying that they're going in, I would suggest that in these 3 or actually 4 new stations, because if you count 63rd
Yes.
Street as
Yes.
that those go when, or let me ask you, when are those going in? Because people figure it's a new station.
My last sentence was going to be, all B division stations will have countdown clocks by the end of the year. All.
All, but
All.
others are going in before the.
Yeah, they're going in spades. Yeah. Yes.
Within 3 months.
Okay.
Interestingly, when they announced that they were coming and live on the G, if you're on a station that shares the F with the G, they're also showing the F on the countdown clocks.
Okay.
And the A, like a
Now,
J Street.
speaking of the 4
C.
stations on the Q, the Second Avenue subway line, I'll call it because the Q goes all the way. There is, at least at 72nd Street, one for the whole long station, downstairs on the platform, one map thing, that
Yep.
indicates that
Yep.
there should be at least.
I have raised this issue because many people have come and complained that
Good.
there is a screen in a B division station.
But I'm talking about the new.
No, talking the countdown clocks.
No, I'm talking about the maps.
Yeah, but listen, I've asked many times, when are repeater screens going to go in? Because it's not that, once you've got the info, it's not that hard to have a repeater screen installed. And I was told, this is an expense, and the expense is actually going to be borne, believe it or not, by the Outfront advertising contract. And they're going to help install the repeater screens all through the B division stations.
But I'm not talking about the.
You're
the
talking about
countdown
on the
clock.
go.
I am talking about I'm not even talking about on the go. What do you call the big thing that has the big map?
On the go.
In the middle,
You mean just with the paper map in?
with the paper map behind glass,
They're getting
and
rid
it
of those.
also has.
Oh, she's talking about
Yeah,
they're getting rid
wait,
of those.
please stay tuned, Trudy, to my report.
But people need those maps
Yeah, yeah,
in
stay
order
tuned.
to see where they go. Go ahead,
Okay.
and then you'll.
Stay tuned. One advantage of the B division countdown clock is that it uses the more versatile LCD displays rather than the LED displays employed in the A division. LCD displays can be used to display a wide range of information beyond the time until the next train. A criticism we have heard is that there aren't enough of these arrival information screens on the B division stations. It's true that those with a smartphone potentially have a countdown clock on them. If you go to Subway Time app, you can have a countdown clock wherever you are right now. In previous chairs' reports, I've updated the council on the work being done in the Enhanced Station Initiative, which has been championed by the governor. I can now report the first completion of a station under this program on September 8th. Transit opened the refurbished 53rd Street R station in Brooklyn. The enhancements provided include improved lighting, countdown clocks, better signage, Wi-Fi, security cameras, new canopies with digital displays at street level, and public art. Not to mention the leaning benches, which everybody has made a big deal of. While this work was completed several weeks ahead of schedule, the renovations still require a 6-month closure of the station. Required. The completion of the other 4th Avenue stations will follow. I know Prospect Avenue is probably next. And the ESI work will soon shift to the Astoria Line stations in Queens. I will have more to say about Phase 3 of the Enhanced Station Initiative in the board report.
Andrew?
Yes.
One of the things that is in those stations is a strip map that shows you, like if you're at 53rd Street, it shows you the rest of the stations that the train will be, in the direction the train is going. So kind of like what's on the, in the trains with the...
Like a moving strip map?
Right.
It'll give you the progress of the train?
Well, it doesn't give you progress of the train, but it shows you that...
The rest of the
the
station.
rest of the line
that's
that
cool.
will be served.
Yeah.
And I believe they are trying to get rid of the maps, the big maps.
Wait till you hear, because the
Oh,
digital...
You're not finished yet?
Oh, not near finished. I'm going to get to the maps, trust me. Speak to it or into it? Okay. Okay. There are a number of questions that we should be asking about the Enhanced Station Initiative, and we have been working to find answers to them. First among these is the source of funding, which is in excess of $200 million for 31 stations, and whether the enhanced station work is impacting other work that is more directly focused on maintaining system reliability. The commitment to the Enhanced Station Initiative did not come with a commitment to increasing the MTA's overall capital funding, and while costs are not large in comparison with projects like a 2nd Avenue subway, work on 33 stations across the system will represent a major commitment of resources. Another thing we might ask is, would this money have been better spent on making stations accessible, improving the elevators in stations, a whole host of things rather than lighting and Wi-Fi. Making stations more accessible is something that probably would have gone a lot further for $200 million. We should also take a look at accommodations that made for riders while these stations are closed. Shuttle bus service has been provided in other cases where stations along a subway line were closed for long periods of time, but in the case of these 4th Avenue stations, no additional bus service has been provided. Providing a shuttle bus would have raised costs, but we should examine more closely whether riders are being unreasonably burdened by these projects. I'll discuss that in my board report. Phase 3 of the ESI involves some stations along Central Park West and along the upper 8th Avenue line, and they have real implications. The steady rollout of select bus service is also continuing with the opening of the system's 15th SBS route on the BS6 over Labor Day weekend earlier this month. This route will supplement existing BX6 local service, which will be continued and even enhanced during morning, evening, and weekends. Next up is the Q52 and Q53 along Cross Bay and Woodhaven Boulevards. That's a major route. It's a very long ride between Woodside, Jackson Heights, the middle of Queens, Howard Beach, and Broad Channel, and the Rockaways. That's a really long ride. This is going to speed that ride. Yes. Yes, that will happen this November. You may remember we had a presentation on the restructuring of express bus routes on Staten Island last year. The process of building a new route network is moving forward with a series of open houses in the first half of October to explain the revised routes and the process. I'm not going to go into all of this. Bill will attend some of those open houses. Hopefully Scott will attend some of those as well. Finally, the 2nd Avenue subway, Phase 2 Community Information Center is now open for business. Like the Phase 1 center, which was on 2nd Avenue between 84 and 85, Phase 2 is now open on 125th Street. That's actually 69 East 125th Street, and that is because, as everybody knows, Phase 2 is going to twist westward from 2nd Avenue and 116th Street and go to a station between Park and Lexington Avenues on 125th Street, so it will serve the 4, 5, 6, and Metro North, as well as the M60 select bus. Now, I do have some very important stuff on the board report I have to get into, so let me do that quickly, because some of it, yes, and some of it is about maps. You've heard about the dashboard. There are some new board procedures that are in place now. Anybody that witnessed yesterday's meeting saw a very different kind of MTA board meeting. Is that a fair statement, Deborah? There was lengthy discussion openly within the public session on a host of issues from commuter rail issues to funding various things to the new towers that are outside some of the bridges and tunnels, to almost anything you can imagine. Things are not like they used to be, and meetings are considerably longer. There was a very long community session, and there's a sense now that the board is absolutely listening to the public. Many of the testimony, much of the testimony yesterday focused on the selling of, well, the alcoholic beverage ads that are in the system, and whether they were targeting low-income communities, people of color, and other things of that nature. I have asked for the breakdown of the stations where this advertising is, and we were told for sure that we will be getting that before the next, in fact, within a week or so. We should know where these are. While alcoholic advertising represents a very small percentage of advertising, many are concerned that if you ban alcohol advertising, it's a slippery slope, and what's next that will offend somebody? Will the Preparation H ads offend somebody? There's Museum of Sex ads that are all throughout the subway, and it just goes on and on. So many people are discussing where you draw the line on banning advertising. Interestingly, Boston is a city that had removed alcohol advertising from its system and is bringing it back. So bringing it back. Yes. Helene Frome told us that, yeah. For whatever reason, they're bringing it back. I do have a lot to talk about, so you will. Yes, we should have time. So let me go on, please. Phase 3 of the Enhanced Station Initiative has taken a very interesting turn. You may recall that some of the delay in opening Phase 1 of 2nd Avenue was due to some slow work by the contractor, who was Judlow. Judlow was also the contractor on Cortlandt Street restoration from the number 1 line. We got a report from the independent engineer that they are woefully behind in a move to try to get Judlow to be more proactive. They were given the Canarsie Tube renovation job. That's a major job. And even that wasn't enough to get Judlow moving, apparently, because they are woefully behind on Cortlandt Street, and the board got really furious about this, and Judlow was the contractor that was supposed to have gotten Phase 3 of the group of stations, of which 72nd, 86th, 110th, and 163rd Street, Amsterdam, on the 8th Avenue line were the stations, and the board voted to not give that to Judlow. They voted to take it away from Judlow and give it to the next bidder. The next bidder does come with a $6 million higher price tag, but if they get it done in a timely fashion, that may actually end up being cheaper in the long run. So that was a major thing. That is what the board is doing now. They are really exercising. They want to see contractors live up to their contracts. They want to see new contractors. ECHO is the one who is now going to do Phase 3 of ESI. ECHO is someone that has done work for bridges and tunnels and Metro North, but they have not yet done a transit authority job, and this will be their first job. So you can see things. Yes, Ellen.
One of the other things that was interesting at the board, I thought, was the last-minute walk-ins of staff summaries that the board said we can't be asked to be voting on something at the same time as we receive it, to make sure they were aware of exactly what was being voted on, and when there was a question, it was walked back, and that's what happened with the Judlow contract, I think. So the being on their toes in the moment and saying we can't be given tremendous amounts of information at the last minute and be asked to vote on it, and that was significant.
They have things that are called walk-ins that are dropped in front of a board member the morning of the time that you're expected to vote on things. Yes, and that's a no-no now.
Okay, Andrew.
Yes.
Now.
Yes.
My question
I'm about to get to
is-
your issue, if you'll just let
Oh,
me.
I thought you finished,
I
and she
have
was
not
talking
finished.
about the
No.
board. Okay.
Okay, so A very interesting part of yesterday's board discussion was the new income streams that are going to obviously be necessary. Scott Reckler, one of the newest board members, has done an editorial in Cranes in favor of congestion pricing, specifically the Move New York plan of congestion pricing. He and Veronica co-did that editorial. There's a lot of great stuff in the Move New York plan. It would provide approximately $1.4 billion. I think it's not that hard to sell to Brooklyn and Queens when you consider the Marine Parkway, the Cross Bay, the Throgs Neck, the Whitestone, and the Triborough, and the Verrazano would all see reduced tolls under the plan. Verrazano is major, obviously, in that area. If you told these boroughs what they would get in terms of transit improvements, road improvements, I think it's not that hard to sell. I don't know. Now that the governor is behind congestion pricing, perhaps it will have some traction, but it was very interesting to see that editorial. And the board is now discussing new additional funding for the MTA, which is obviously going to be necessary, especially if the mayor and the city of New York do not come up with half of the $839 million subway action plan. Right now, the state is the only entity that has put up the approximately $430 some odd million as of yet, and they actually haven't put it up yet. They said you'll need it, you'll get it when you need it. Now, as far as this other thing, and this is the last thing that I will go into because this is basically what Trudy and others have been asking about. This new Outfront digital contract that was approved, listen to me, is going to replace all paper advertising, maps, in-train, on commuter stations, in transit stations, ads with digital ads. 20% of this massive amount of 17,000 screens, I believe is the total, if not more, will be devoted to service information. The ones that are not devoted, if there is some sort of transit issue that requires the public to know there's a change, will immediately convert to those. So you, like there is on some of the Lexington and West Side IRT trains now, where there's a big ad at the subway entrance, but on the bottom is a little scrolling ticker as to the service reliability and what's going on. That's outside the station. You will have major signs outside the station giving you access to information. You will have it in the stations. You will have it on the trains. I mean, it's going to be actually overkill, if you must know, about the screens. So I saw some public comment today about, you mean I'm not going to be able to tune out of advertising no matter what? I asked a question at the meeting. I said, are these light sensitive? So if a car has dimmer light, are these going to get brighter? And the answer was yes. So maps will be digital, ads will be digital, service information will be digital. Yes.
I'm talking right now. Stations have the same map that you fold up, that you look at, and everything else. Mm-hmm. People want to see, when they're in a certain station, how they connect to someplace else, without it being digital, without it being anything else. On some stations, like at Times Square, there are about 3 of them on the platform. I'm talking about these big, the things that have, we used to call them, when I was working here, in the dark ages when we actually used
They're
paper,
on the goes,
we called them the passenger information centers. They're now called the customer information centers, but on the platform.
You're talking about the things that give you both
No, it's
weekend,
a map.
yeah.
A map,
In
but
plastic?
a large map in the plastic
Yes.
container on the
Passenger
platform.
information
There
centers,
is
yeah.
only one right now on each of the new stations.
Mm-hmm.
There should be at least, not waiting for digital, not waiting for anything else, so that you don't have to walk the whole length of the, if you come in on 83rd Street,
Yep.
you don't have to walk all the way up to the 86th. I'm talking on the platform.
Yeah, I get it. I know what you mean.
Okay, so but I'm not talking about digital. I'm not talking about
But
video.
digital's coming.
A good old-fashioned
They are
map.
talking digital, Trudy.
No, but I am right now, not waiting till they do the digital till it's installed. That'll take forever. Right now, I am requesting that on the 4 stations of the 2nd Avenue subway, there be at least 2 large maps on each, we're getting rid of them when? When?
They're not putting
Next
them in the
Tisha
new
B'Av.
stations.
I am, nobody is in the new
We
station.
can, Trudy, we
There's
can ask,
one.
but I know what my answer is going to be.
Well, I would like you to ask,
we'll ask.
or else tell me who I can talk to.
We'll ask.
Because this is ludicrous. It takes nothing, no money practically.
We'll ask.
We have the maps already.
We'll ask. Mr. X, you had a comment?
Earlier today, you said the board members are listening. I beg to differ on that. I seem to remember Juan MC from Walking Back Carter held a public hearing here on primary election day, which was regarding capital projects, which was scheduled to start at 4:30 p.m. And to top it all, she was absent. To top it off, the only board member who was here looks like Richard Mole, who started Night Court as Bull Shannon. So you tell me how the board members are listening when they're constantly missing MTA public hearings, which I've stated over the years. I've stated, get off your high horse, get off Paul McCartney, just get off and stay off, get off and stay off, don't get back on. Hello.
They are listening at the board meetings and at the committee meetings, I can tell you that.
Well, did not listen at the public hearings.
That public hearing attendance is not wonderful, I'll grant you that.
Well, yeah, well, after what I saw here last Tuesday, which was a joke, there were only 13 speakers, and like I said, there was only one board member here. It looks like Richard Mole started Night Court as Bull Shannon. He wasn't here for long. Where was Juan FC from Welcome Back Carter?
The public hearing whereby Metro North radically improved service to Tremont and Melrose, I think was poorly attended.
I think it had about
Yeah.
five or six people comment. And
Yeah, because that was apple pie. Who's going to be
Yeah.
against that? Right,
And
right.
really, the one that was, the last one that was held, the project, all those projects have already been presented, and they're in the capital program.
Well, I just want to inform you,
They've
too.
already been in there.
Since you were absent on primary election day, okay, a day people campaign and vote, just work the polls, which I mentioned to Wannacy from Welcome Back Carter, who shouldn't run the MTA, but stands for money thrown away to begin with. I stated, host a scholar station, Lincoln Hospital is nearby, needs 2 elevators. I say the South Bronx Community Congress first advocated for those elevators over 2 years ago, yet that particular project was unlisted in the book they gave us, which I could use for toilet tissue, but that's another story. So I don't see how the MTA is listening. If the South Bronx Community Congress first advocated for these elevators over 2 years ago, why was it unmentioned on September 12th? How long? I blasted Wannacy Welcome Back Carter about that.
I've heard it. I've heard you say it. Thank you. Alan.
I'll take 60 seconds on 20 topics. Number one, Mr. Haberstam came earlier, but I believe that the PCAC is a very important group, and as a few speakers over the years have said, no, I meet with you occasionally, I'm here for you. And he should understand he should give up something else that he does every day in order to be here, to meet with you once every year. Number two, the issue I think he raised, it was wrong to hold that public hearing on the primary election day. I called the chairman, the so-called chairman's office, because he really loaded 8 no chairman. Number three is Haberstam, 2 more items here. Haberstam, I would like to say to you that the $800 million given to the MTA, we know what's wrong with the transit authority, well, the PCAC and the woman in the street, Judy, no, but it shouldn't be $800 million. That's what Mario Cuomo's son took from the MTA budget to use for other state projects, which he was allowed to do. So it should be $800 million plus another $800 million. So, or maybe $600 million. But the fact is, you're only getting that money that was stolen from the quote-unquote, stolen from the MTA budget. With regard,
By multiple governors, I might add. Multiple governors. More than one governor has taken money from the MTA, yes.
John Law, quick question, and then one more item about the map. Was there financial penalties for John Law for failing to do things on time?
They lost the contract.
That is a big thing.
As far as the Canarsie tube work, there are very, very potent penalties for delays over 15 months by the day. by the day. It's high.
PCAC members of finally, ladies and gentlemen, there's a night subway map was reissued in March this year and redistributed. And so in April, we can find, what I want to know, is anyone here a stamp collector or was a stamp collector? Anybody? No one?
Here.
You remember the Farley special printings? The National Park series in Burford that he, Postmaster General, took sheets of commemorative stamps, didn't have to perforate it, gave it to his friends, and they have big value. The company very upset.
Thanks.
We printed enough of those.
Okay, Alan. Unfortunately, some of us have to run to another meeting now, so I have to. Well, we don't have it, unfortunately. I have to go.
We got nationwide opprobrium, and the post office had to print millions of those stamps. There's no question.
Motion to adjourn.
What are you going to do about this?
As Robert's Rule of Order at the meeting, Andrew, on the record, can we please call to continue new business next month? And Andrew, before we have the meeting start, can I have a word? Not today, another day? Thank you. I didn't ask today because you did say another meeting.